on Monday morning. What a weekend. We got a first full look at the Mets and Yankees, and things pretty good despite the losses yesterday. A couple of series won for both teams, so I don't want to hear any complaining yet about bullpens or any of that stuff. It's too early. Your team's got off to a good start against division rivals, albeit the Nationals are a terrible baseball team, but the Yankees took 2 out of 3 from the Boston Red Sox. You had a Masters that was interesting enough. I mean, it didn't have the real drama on Sunday. If you were someone like me that got Scotty Scheffler at plus 1,500 before the tournament, you loved every bit of it. And then, of course, we're now finally heading into the NBA postseason. We've been waiting for this for a long time with the Brooklyn Nets and who they were going to play, and all of that is set. We're getting into all of it. Good morning, Boomer. How are you?
Yeah, we got a ton to talk about because when we left on Friday, there were a lot of things that were happening.
Oh, the Aaron Judge contract, too.
Yes. And the Aaron Judge contract came up, and, and I really felt like they were going to go 7 years with him on an extension because I'm sure he wanted 8, and I'm sure that the Yankees wanted 6, and they ended up really at 7, which would be, obviously a happy medium for everybody, but it wasn't because it includes a $17 million payday this year. And remember, Aaron Judge has filed for the largest arbitration award in history, and that is $21 million from the Yankees, which still has to be heard. And you think that's going to get contentious? I honestly, and I understand where Aaron Judge is coming from. It's his money. I don't want to tell him what to do or how to do it. When you think back to a number of players over the years that have had same situations that have either turned down money or even this year, guys like Carlos Correa reportedly turned down a 10 years, $275 million contract by the Detroit Tigers and ended up signing with the Minnesota Twins for $105 million with 3 years of opt-outs and all sorts of nonsense. I mean, when you think about a 7-year, $213.5 million contract, that's $30.5 million per year. He's 30 years old. I told you last week that he got started late because he spent 3 years in college.
That's right.
This all has to do about his age and its timing. And, yeah, Yankees want to keep him. Of course they want to keep him. They would have never made an offer anything remotely close to this if they did want to keep him. And you also have to remember, this is a guy that has missed 156 games since 2017. And they're, to me, I really kind of feel like the Yankees went above and beyond. Now, Aaron Judge is taking a huge chance here. And you think back to Juan Gonzalez. He turned down an 8-year, $140 million contract.
Juan Gonzalez.
And the reason I say this is because he turned down an 8-year, $140 million contract. He had 2 MVPs at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And, Detroit offered him that. He said no. And 4 years later, he was out of the league, and he basically made a fraction of what he was offered back then in 2000. Also, remember that A-Rod opted out on his contract with the Yankees and got a 10-year, $275 million contract. And that's, he opted out right in the middle of his contract back after the 2007 season, right in the middle of the World Series. I remember Craig and I had just started back then, and I was like, man, I can't believe A-Rod did this during the World Series.
Yeah, well, that was sort of on brand for him at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah, oh, man, it was asinine.
Yep.
And I think he regretted the way it went down. Now, you have every right to opt out. I don't know if the Yankees really offered any opt-outs in here for Aaron Judge, but I will say he is taking a huge gamble.
So I wouldn't have done this if I were him, but I respect the fact that he's doing it. And I am completely floored with the confidence that he has, with the injuries that he has had throughout his career. For him to sit up there and go, I'm going to talk to 30 teams at the end of the year, the Yankees will be one of those teams. To basically say, I'm going to have a great year and someone's going to want to pay me the money that I expect at the end of this year takes balls galore, and I respect him for that. However, if that were me, with Aaron Judge's career to this point, I would have taken the money, and I do think it's a huge gamble. And quite frankly, because of this and the way he's handling it, I'm rooting for him a little bit more. I really am. Because, I mean, you could look at it like he could have taken $233 million, and he's basically gambling, $67 million, because he's probably the most he's probably going to get is at $300 million range, you would think?
I'm telling you, I don't see it. I see a lot of teams around the league, especially like the Red Sox. The Red Sox are a team that are are hard, fast in their negotiation when it comes to guys that are over 30. I kind of feel like that's what's happening around the league. Now, there could be some team out there like Detroit that could go out and spend the money because they know as soon as they get him, or even San Francisco. He's a California kid. I can't see the Dodgers going after him. But the thing about it is that I know it's really tough and it's unique for him. The other thing I was wondering about, and I couldn't go back, and I'm not a Yankee fan. Everybody out there knows this, and I didn't dive deep enough into knowing whether I do remember when he first got to the Yankees and he was in their minor league system. Everybody's talking Judge and Judge and Judge. I just wonder. I'm trying to think back, and maybe you can answer this, or one of our callers can answer this. One of the listeners out there. Did the Yankees hold him back prematurely to stop his time clock from starting in terms of arbitration? Or did they bring him up when they were supposed to bring him up? And maybe this, instead of the last year of arbitration being the age of 30, maybe the last year of arbitration could have been 29.
From what I remember of that time, it wasn't one of those, they're definitely holding him back. He was one of those guys that kind of burst on the scene. He was a prospect, but he wasn't like one of those can't-miss guys. And he got better and better and better and sort of was like a late bloomer. And then he came up and was like, oh, my God. And he was someone who was known for striking out, was inconsistent, and then finally burst onto the scene and was a superstar.
Okay, so that doesn't go into the negotiation.
It wasn't like they were holding him back.
Right, okay. So, I mean, sometimes you remember that whole argument about holding a guy back in service time and starting them in the minors.
From what I remember. And
I'm wondering if maybe there is somebody out there that knows this. If, in fact, he felt like that was the case, then that also makes
he might have.
Yeah. That also makes me understand a little bit more why maybe he and his agent are thinking, they screwed me back then, and I want $21 million this year. I don't even know if the 7 years added on to this year at 213 is enough. I don't know. It doesn't sound like it. And if he's comparing himself to Mike Trout, he's making a huge mistake because Mike Trout has been a 3-time MVP. Now, 3 years into his big contract at $450 million, I think it's 400. He's at $430 million. You got to remember, he's only played 90 games in the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and this would be like a nightmare scenario for the Yankees if Aaron Judge over the next 3 years signs this big contract and all of a sudden there goes the oblique.
Well, I mean, I think that's why they didn't go that extra mile to make sure that he got signed was because of the injuries. There's no other reason why. Age and injuries. He's not 25 years old and he's missed a lot of time. So, I mean, I think that Aaron Judge, who seemed upset too, by the way, that the contract numbers were out there, and I actually don't blame Brian Cashman for broadcasting that because he has gotten crushed with this offseason. All we've heard is, and we've said it, Yankees don't seem like the same Yankees. Yankees seem cheap. Hal is not George. All of these things over and over again. So they couldn't come out of this thing looking like they weren't making a legitimate offer to Aaron Judge because that would have compounded everything that we've been saying about their offseason. So Brian Cashman in a PR move had to do that stuff.
All right, so whose money is Brian Cashman spending?
The Steinbrenner's money.
Well, the Steinbrenners and other partners.
Yeah.
It's not just, it's not like the Steinbrenner family is worth, well, I guess they are worth whatever their fraction of the Yankees are, but Hal Steinbrenner controls the Yankees, not Brian Cashman. Brian Cashman can go to Hal Steinbrenner and say, this is what we think is fair. This is what the numbers tell us to do. And by the way, we're probably going out a year too far. Because, this contract at the end of it is going to be like A-Rod's contract. It's going to be like, we've had bad contracts here before, and, we're heading down the road of having a potentially another bad contract. So it is Hal Steinbrenner. It falls at the feet of Hal Steinbrenner. So Brian Cashman is doing what ownership tells him to do. He advises ownership, this is what we think is fair. These are all the numbers that we've looked at. These are all the comparables. I mean, it is analytics on steroids when it comes to these contracts. And, Hal Steinbrenner has to say yay or nay. He has to say, okay, we are holding fast on our $17 million offer this year in arbitration. That's $7 million more than he made last year. Aaron Judge wants to double what he made last year to $21 million. And the Yankees are holding at 17, and they were holding at 17 to the point where part of this contract was this year stays at 17, and then it kicks in as a 7-year, not potentially, but it really is a 7-year extension. And the number is $30.5 million AAV. So I figured this is what it was going to be. I said 3 years. 7 years, 210. That's what I think I said. And so when these numbers came out, I wasn't shocked because I felt like it was going to be close, and that the Yankees were willing to go to 38, but they were not willing to go to 39. And when I mean that, I'm talking age. And they really were not going to move up to like 34, 35, 36.
So is it over between these two? Is Aaron Judge and the Yankees a marriage that's going to end at the end of this year? That's really the question.
I think what Aaron Judge should do, what I would do, I would ask my agent to do this. And I think the Yankees offer would probably stay on the table.
Meaning throughout this season.
Yeah, I think I believe that it would be. I mean, if Aaron Judge went back and said, I've had second thoughts, it looks like a good contract, I'll take it. But if I were him, I would say to my agent, okay, look, how many guys have been in my situation and how many guys have been screwed? And Juan Gonzalez comes to mind. Not everybody could be A-Rod, where you could just opt out in the middle of the World Series. And I'm telling you, the Yankees rue the day that they signed that extension with him.
Yeah,
no, even though they won a World Series 2 years later, I'm telling you, they rue the day that they signed that extension.
From the at the top of his game athlete perspective, it's going to be very hard, in my opinion, to change. I'm asking you now to change Aaron Judge's mind. So take yourself back to you win an MVP. Aaron Judge just came off a really good season. He finished second in an MVP a couple years ago to Altuve, who was cheating.
But he's not an MVP.
But but he hasn't been. He hasn't actually won it. But he's coming off a good season. He feels great about himself. He's heading into this year thinking, I'm going to have the year of my life. I'm going to show these guys up. I'm going to hit free agency, and I'm going to get every penny. That's what he's thinking.
If he does, then
wouldn't you have it?
Well, I'm just saying, if he does that, then God bless him. I'm just telling you that it's not like the Yankees didn't make what I consider a very serious offer.
But you know what I'm saying? That's where his mentality is.
I know,
at
of course
right now.
it is.
Yeah.
I mean, and look, I want him to stay here. I think he's a terrific player. I think he's if I'm a Yankee fan, I don't want to see 99 in right field for the Mets. That's for sure. I certainly don't want to see 99 in right field for the Red Sox, although the Red Sox aren't going to go to numbers that he would want simply because they've already shown that they're not going to, put these big numbers out there for these guys well over 30 at the end of their contracts. So it's one of those really weird things where it's a ton of money, and he made a decision in his life. Now, I obviously none of us were there when he made this decision. I don't know why he made it. Maybe he can explain it. But he decided to go to college, and he decided to go to college for 3 years. These are the 3 years right now we're talking about, from 27 to 30, that if he were 27, believe me, they would do the contract, they'd do the 10-year deal, and it would be like $350 million. If he were doing what he were doing prior to being, turning 27 years old. But now that he's 30, it puts it in a whole different realm. And he's got to understand how teams look at it. And he's got to believe, or his agent's got to believe, like to me, Correa is another example. So he turned down 10 years, $275 million from the Tigers. And he signed a 3-year, $109 million deal with the Twins. I think it's 109, 105, somewhere around there. And he has opt-outs thinking that he's going to get a huge deal from somewhere else. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know where baseball's going. All I know is that if the player understands where the team is coming from, then this is a number. While if I could figure it out well in advance, I'm sure they could have figured it out.
Yeah, I mean, it just was so awkward. Opening day, press conference, Aaron Judge, we played in the morning. Then Brian Cashman's press conference saying there was no deal. Then Aaron Judge after the game. It was just... it cast a cloud over what ended up being a very, very exciting comeback win on opening day.
It was a good weekend for them. It was great baseball all weekend for both the Mets and the Yankees. And I don't know. I personally think it's a fair offer. His agent obviously does not think so. I don't know if they went to $21 million this year and then the contract. So you would add on an extra $4 million
difference that made him not sign it.
Maybe you go to $220. I don't know. Look. It's a fair deal. I think it's a fair deal. I really do. I don't know what to tell you, especially with his age, his history of injury, and the fact that this is going to go out to age 38.
No, I mean, I think it's a fair deal as well, and I would have taken it if I were Aaron Judge. But, man, if he ends up going and finishing this season and having a great year and going out there and getting every penny, that's going to be a huge flex in his favor.
Well, the other things that now become in play are the things that we talked about last week. Is the potential trade option at the trading deadline? If the Yankees are out of it.
Yeah, they have to be totally out of it.
Yeah. I mean, that's what happens if he ends up missing 2 months of this year with an oblique, a knee, a shoulder. Does he play differently later in the season, protecting himself, because of, his long-term contract projections for somebody else if he's in the middle of a great year? I don't know.